For most of basketball history, France was known for fashion, football, and finesse, but not for dominating the NBA. And yet somehow, over the last 2 decades, the country quietly became a basketball powerhouse. Tony Parker, Rudy Gobert, Nicolas Batum, Evan Fournier, and now Victor Wembanyama, the 7'4" prodigy being called the future of basketball. How did this happen? How did a country once dismissed as too soft, too European, suddenly produce world-class players and Olympic-level teams? This is the story of how France, through culture, system, and survival, suddenly got really good at basketball. Basketball didn't start in France with highlight reels or NBA dreams. It began quietly, a borrowed game brought over by American soldiers after World War I. They set up hoops on army bases, played on cobblestone yards, and left behind something more powerful than they realized: curiosity. In a country rebuilding itself from the ashes of war, the idea of this new, fast American sport took root. It was different from football. It didn't require a field or a team of 11, just a ball, a hoop, and imagination. For decades, basketball remained the side act in France's grand theater of sports. Football had its stars: Platini, Zidane, while basketball had part-timers, amateurs, and small gyms hidden behind high schools. But by the 1980s, something began to change. A handful of French coaches, visionaries like Jean-Pierre de Vizinci, looked at the country's raw athletic talent and saw potential. They believed France could compete with America and the Soviet Union if it learned to train smarter, not just harder. That vision would lead to the creation of a system that would change everything. In 1987, France launched INSEP, a national training camp on the edge of Paris. It wasn't a normal school. It was a laboratory for greatness. Here, the country's most promising teenagers lived, studied, and trained under Olympic-level coaches. They learned discipline, teamwork, and something deeply French: style. Fluid, intelligent, unselfish basketball. While other countries chased individual stars, France built a system that developed thinkers. Every kid learned every position. Guards were taught how to post up. Centers were taught how to pass. The goal wasn't to create role players, it was to create complete players. And while the government-funded system focused on technique and precision, another world was growing outside those walls: the concrete courts of suburbs, known as the banlieues. These were neighborhoods filled with immigrant families from Africa, the Caribbean, and the Middle East, places where life was tough, and basketball became an escape. Out there, the game wasn't organized. It was raw, loud, emotional. It gave the sport something no classroom could teach. By the end of the 1980s, the two worlds began to merge: INSEP's structure and the banlieue's soul. Together, they formed the DNA of modern French basketball: disciplined yet daring, intelligent yet creative, a reflection of the country itself. And soon that DNA would create a player who would carry France from curiosity to credibility. By the late 1990s, France had a system. What it didn't have yet was a star. Someone who could make French basketball matter on a global scale. Someone who could make kids in Paris and Marseille believe they didn't have to be American to play like one. And then came a skinny teenager with lightning in his feet and fire in his eyes: Tony Parker. Born in Belgium, raised in France, Tony grew up on two worlds: the French structure that taught him how to think the game, and the American influence that taught him how to attack it. He joined the French national youth program at INSEP at 15, where coaches immediately saw something different. He wasn't just fast, he was fearless. Parker treated every possession like a challenge, driving into defenders twice his size with a confidence that didn't feel French. It felt universal. When the Spurs drafted him in 2001, no one expected much. A 19-year-old point guard from France, too young, too soft, too European. But Parker wasn't listening. By his second season, he was running Greg Popovich's offense. By his third, he was an NBA champion. And by 2007, he was Finals MVP, the first European guard to ever do it. His speed was deadly, his composure surgical. He wasn't trying to be flashy. He was trying to be perfect, and that's what made him unstoppable. For American fans, Tony Parker was a surprise. For France, he was a revolution. Overnight, basketball became cool in France. Kids copied his teardrop in school gyms. Local courts were packed with teenagers wearing number 9 jerseys. He wasn't just a player, he was proof. Proof that French talent could lead a dynasty. That a kid from Paris could run an offense built for Tim Duncan and win rings alongside the best. But Tony's greatest legacy wasn't just what he did. It's what he made possible. Behind him stood a wave. Boris Diaw, Mikhail Petrice, Nicolas Batum, and Evan Fournier. Players who watched him break through and decided to follow. And through INSEP, more young stars began to rise. Inspired by the idea, and their accents, their passports, and their backgrounds didn't limit them. Tony Parker didn't just win championships, he changed France's relationship with basketball. He gave the nation its first superstar, and its first standard. Because once Parker proved it could be done, France stopped trying to catch up to America and started building its own future. Next, the factory of talent. By the early 2000s, France had its blueprint. Tony Parker had become the face, but behind him was an entire machine built to create more like him. This wasn't luck, it was infrastructure. At the heart of it all was INSEP, a government-funded sports institute built on a simple belief. If talent is everywhere, then opportunity should be too. Every year, France's top teenage athletes were handpicked from across the country. From Nice, the Nantes, Versailles, the Montaigu, brought to Paris and trained like Olympians. They studied in classrooms by day, trained twice daily, and lived together under one roof. Basketball wasn't just a sport, it was a science. The focus wasn't just on athleticism, it was on intelligence, reading plays, understanding geometry, mastering decision-making. Every player learned every position. Centers passed like guards, guards posted like centers. It created what coaches called the French way. Beautiful, balanced, and deeply technical. Out of this system came wave after wave of talent. Boris Diaw, Nicolas Batum, Evan Fournier, Rudy Gobert, Frank Ntilikina. Each different, each refined, each fluent in the same basketball language. Unselfishness. But there was another classroom, one without walls, in the banlieues, the rough working-class suburbs of Paris, Lyon, and Marseille. Basketball became the sport of identity for kids from African, Caribbean, and Middle Eastern backgrounds. The game wasn't just about skill, it was about survival. In the streets, players learned intensity, creativity, grit. They built their own culture, bold, expressive, and fearless. They didn't have perfect facilities, but they had something the system couldn't teach: hunger. Two different worlds, one built on precision, one built on passion. But when they collided, France became unstoppable. The system gave them structure. The streets gave them soul. Together they created a generation and could think like Europeans and fight like Americans. By the 2010s, France wasn't just producing good players, it was producing complete ones. Versatile, disciplined, confident, and the NBA was watching closely. From government-funded programs to street ball legends, France had built the perfect hybrid of art and structure. It wasn't just a country learning basketball anymore, it was a country defining it. Next, defense, discipline, and Rudy Gobert. If you love seeing how basketball conquers the world, hit subscribe. More untold stories are just getting started. If Tony Parker gave France its spark, Rudy Gobert gave it its backbone. By the time Gobert reached the NBA in 2013, French basketball already had credibility. But it didn't yet have an identity, a single trait that told the world who France was on a basketball court. Gobert changed that. Born in Saint-Quentin, raised by a single mother, Rudy was quiet, disciplined, and obsessed. He wasn't the most gifted scorer or the flashiest athlete, but what he had was rarer: focus. At INSEP, he was nicknamed the Stifle Tower, not for his size, but for his obsession with precision. Every step, every rotation, every contest mattered. To him, defense wasn't glamorous, it was sacred. When he arrived in Utah, the NBA barely noticed. A late first-round pick from France wasn't supposed to redefine the center position. But year by year, Gobert evolved from a curiosity to a cornerstone. 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, multiple All-Star selections, hundreds of block shots, and one unshakable truth: If you entered his paint, you paid for it. But what Gobert truly changed wasn't just the game. It was perception. For years, French players were seen as technical, maybe even soft. Good teammates, clever shooters, but not enforcers. Rudy tore that image apart. He made defense cool again. He made toughness French. On the national team, Gobert became the anchor. Under coach Vincent Collet, France built its identity around defense, cohesion, and control. They didn't out-athlete opponents, they out-disciplined them. In 2014, France shocked the world by beating Spain on its home floor. In 2019, they did it again, this time eliminating the United States. In 2021, they stood on the Olympic podium, silver medals glinting in Tokyo's light. France wasn't a surprise anymore, it was a standard. At the center of it all, literally and figuratively, stood Rudy Gobert. He never chased headlines, he chased impact. He showed greatness isn't just about scoring, it's about presence. The kind that changes the temperature of a game the moment you step on the floor. For every French kid growing up in gyms across Paris, Lyon, and Marseille, Gobert became the model of consistency, patience, and pride. He taught them that defense, like discipline, is an art. And from that foundation, from that quiet, unshakable wall, would rise something entirely new. Something that would redefine not just French basketball, but basketball itself. Every era has a symbol. For France, that symbol isn't a trophy or a banner. It's a teenager who defies physics. His name is Victor Wembanyama. And he's not just the future of French basketball. He's the result of everything France has spent 30 years building. To understand Victor is to understand France itself, a country that fused discipline with creativity, logic with art. A system built to refine and a culture built to dream. Born in Le Chesnay, just outside Paris, Victor grew up surrounded by sports. His mother a basketball coach, his father a track athlete. He joined the French youth programs early, trained within the same framework that created Parker, Dois, and Gobert. Only this time, the system had evolved. INSEP wasn't just producing players anymore, it was producing prototypes. France had learned to blend science with intuition, analytics with artistry, and out of the blend came a player who shouldn't exist. A 7'4" guard who moves like a point guard, shoots like a wing, and defends like a skyscraper. He's not just tall, he's terrifyingly complete. The product of decades of experimentation, refinement, and faith in a national identity that refused to copy America, and instead created something new. When Wembanyama was drafted first overall in 2023, it wasn't just a victory for him, it was a victory for France. For every coach who taught footwork in a freezing gym, for every kid who practiced layups under a flickering streetlight, for every generation that believed their time would come. And now they had proof, because Victor Wembanyama was more than a player, he's a mirror. He reflects the country that made him, precise, creative, confident. He doesn't represent the end of France's rise, he represents the beginning of its domination. From Tony Parker's finesse to Gobert's discipline, France's evolution was gradual, deliberate, patient. And with Wemby, that patience paid off. Because when you watch Wembanyama, you're not just seeing a 7'4" phenom. You're seeing a generation of coaches, parents, and dreamers who believed a small country could build something world-changing. He's not just the future of France, he's the future of basketball itself. And he's only just begun. Next, the final chapter. The secret ingredient. Every empire has a blueprint, and every success story has a secret. For France, it wasn't genetics. It wasn't luck. It wasn't even one player. It was belief. For over 30 years, France believed that basketball could be more than a hobby, that it could be a craft. They believed in process over promise, in teaching before chasing talent. The result wasn't one golden generation, it was a system that could create one after another. From Tony Parker's spin move to Rudy Gobert's roar, from Boris Dois's leadership to Victor Wembanyama's reach, these players were born from the same soil, but grown from the same philosophy. The secret wasn't money, it was structure, it was culture, it was the understanding that basketball isn't just a sport, it's education. In France, they didn't just train athletes, they raised thinkers. They built environments where kids could fail safely, learn slowly, and rise completely. And when the world called them soft, they became tough. When the NBA doubted them, they doubled down on discipline. They never tried to be American. They tried to be French. That's what made all the difference. The French system wasn't designed to imitate. It was designed to outlast. France didn't arrive overnight. It took decades of patience, trial, and heartbreak. But that's what made their rise real. Because overnight success fades, but foundations last forever. Today, France is more than a basketball country. It's a basketball culture, one that celebrates teamwork, creativity, and intelligence, values that mirror the nation itself. And as new generations rise, the secret ingredient remains the same. Not height, not talent, but belief. Belief that greatness can be taught, that culture can be engineered, that a small country with big dreams can redefine a global game. France didn't suddenly get good at basketball. It decided to. And once it did, there was no turning back. Because in France, basketball isn't imported anymore. It's homegrown.